Hello, my name is Thomas. Welcome to British Culture. Albion Never Dies. Today, I'm talking to Christopher Morales, who is known on Instagram and YouTube as That One Bond Guy. He's been on my podcast before, talking about a pilot's perspective on James Bond, giving me a spoiler review of No Time to Die, and also Britishness as viewed from California. Only my 11th episode. That was some time ago. It was a very popular episode. It's fantastic to have him back. We're talking about 1985's James Bond film, A View to a Kill, currently celebrating its 40th anniversary and getting a lot of love from fans, us included. Thank you, Chris Morales. Hello, Chris Morales, and known as That One Bond Guy on the internet. Thank you very much for joining me again.
Hey Thomas, thanks for having me. It's been a minute since we last chatted, so this is definitely going to be fun to catch up and talk Bond. How have you been, sir?
Very, very well. It's been far too long, and I can tell you lots of people really appreciated last time when you gave me your California perspectiveness on Britishness. It was really appreciated. So naturally, I have to ask you about the Californian James Bond film, A View to a Kill.
Oh yes. So it's anniversary year, right? So
Hmm.
it's gonna be, I know there's quite a few opportunities to go and maybe with travel with the group to certain locations all around the world. But luckily for me, I live about an hour and a half till the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, which is known because there's quite a few scenes shot there. You know, if you recall the City Hall scene or the fire truck chase or even the Sutton House is something you can go and check out. Pretty exciting stuff to have a Bond location in my neck of the woods. And even though it was Roger Moore's, maybe not his best, it still was a Roger Moore Bond film at its best. And I think it was very enjoyable. And it's always one of my guilty pleasure Bond films that I like to put on from time to time.
Absolutely. And yeah, so we're mainly going to talk about the last hour of the
Mhm.
film and yeah, all set in California. And I think we've both traveled around the film locations quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. About a couple of years back, I decided to get a group of my best friends and we went on a road trip. We went to we went to San Francisco ultimately just to hang out, but I had to force them to come with me to these locations. They're not necessarily Bond fans, but I was like, okay, if I'm gonna drive you guys the whole hour and 30 minutes, I'll pitch in for gas. I don't care, but we have to go to these Bond locations because I've never actually walked in Bond's footsteps there. So, you know, we have Fisherman's Wharf. And then obviously City Hall, which we were able to walk around and look at, take pictures. And then, unfortunately, at the time, the Sutton House wasn't open for visitors, but I know you've been there and you've taken some amazing pictures.
Thank
And
you.
then lastly, what else? Oh, the Golden Gate Bridge, of course. So, you know, went over that, and then there's actually a beautiful park that's right next to it that you can take some really amazing pictures at. So it's yeah, I got to enjoy them after twisting their arms, not too much, but it was a fun time.
It's always difficult to, it has to be handled sensitively when you've got a non-Bond fan you're taking to a Bond location. I think a
Oh,
lot of fans
definitely.
have that taking a wife or a girlfriend. So if it's an expensive restaurant, maybe it's fine. If it's a beautiful
Yeah.
place, a car park in East London, maybe not.
Right. And usually, typically, a pint or you know, a nice place for fish and chips does the trick for the bartering. So it's not too bad, you know. And they enjoyed it. It was fun.
Absolutely. Now I'm curious because obviously you grew up fairly close to the film, not quite on your doorstep, but close enough
Mhm.
to recognize the places. I'm wondering, when you watched it as a child for the first time, how did it strike you seeing your local landmarks there?
Well, as you know, some of the earlier Bond films, you know, they did have some films that were shot on location, but you could also tell when they were shot either at Pinewood or at a different studio. But, you know, seeing this Bond film for the first time was kind of trippy for me because I see locations that I've seen before in my lifetime. Because I've been to San Francisco many times as a young kid with family on vacation, whatever. But seeing it on the big screen and seeing James Bond actually walking around, it was it definitely changed perspective the second time or the first time rather, I went to go to those locations. Because of course I've been to Fisherman's Wharf and Pier 39 and walk by City Hall and whatnot for different things. But there's a whole brand new perspective considering that Bond himself was actually there, and a Bond film was filmed there. So it almost kind of made it like it was my first time again. It kind of felt
Ah.
surreal, and I was finding myself getting excited, and then I'm like, wait a second. I've been here before. Why am I getting so excited? But that's the effect Bond has, especially if it's filmed at a location that it's really close to you. Like for everybody in London, like all the
Hmm.
different scenes, whether it's No Time to Die or whatever other Bond films that were shot in London, and it's like Skyfall. Like I'm sure you've had to admit every once in a while you've recreated that Skyfall running scene. Come on, like like I'm sure if I were to go. At least if I were to go with a group of Bond fans, one of us would end up doing that Craig Redding scene just in
Absolutely.
Skyfall. Yeah, you know what I mean? It kind of like adds a little excitement to even an everyday location.
Yeah, I like that it adds to the excitement. If Roger Moore's been there, if Daniel Craig's been there, it adds
Yeah.
to what could be fairly mundane, to be fair. Some of the shots in London, I know that there are people who live in London who walk past it every day, but for most of them it raises it. Occasionally they're like, I prefer the Bond film where he goes somewhere I could never go. But for the
Mhm.
most part, I hear people who it adds to something.
Oh, definitely.
When Roger Moore was wandering around San Francisco, I'm wondering, is there anywhere you think he missed? Is there anywhere you'd like to have seen in the film that wasn't represented?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, thinking on this one, I think it would have been really cool to see him actually go. It would have been really cool to see him actually go to the airport, like kind of like GoldenEye or Live and Let Die, or sorry, not GoldenEye, but Tomorrow Never Dies, where we see Bond going into the airport. Been kind of cool to see him, just because, of course, me being an aviation guy, seeing him go through the iconic building of San Francisco International and seeing how that would have been like. Golden Gate Park would have been pretty cool if he was able to go through that. And well, shoot, why not somewhere on the beach, Or even here's a big one. Why not Alcatraz?
Oh, wow.
You know, that
Yes.
would have been really cool. If even if I'm really surprised they didn't incorporate that to, some type of, pull a whole, well, this was way before The Rock with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, then there's been plenty of films filmed on location on Alcatraz, but I feel like maybe they dropped the ball in that. How cool would it have been to be Alcatraz and Bond, whether it's going through a villain layer, or Max Zorn kind of setting things up there, whatever it may be. But yeah, shoot, out of all of that I just said, I think Alcatraz was one of the biggest ones that they might have missed.
I thought it would make a great villain's base.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm curious about this film. This film has a big, heavy dose of nostalgia for a lot of older
Hmm.
fans, right? So this film came out in the year of my birth. So it's the star sign Bond for me. Um, so for when I see it, it's all the memories of the stuff, maybe secondhand, or that it's just the media, it's the right kind of music. When I watch all
Hmm.
through the films, this is the point when people's hair looks like proper haircuts. Cars look like
Yeah.
proper cars. But for yourself, obviously, there's that separation. How
Yes.
do you
Yeah.
find that? It's because it's a very 1980s vibe to the film.
Mhm. I think it's outside of some of the previous Roger Moore films because it was transitioning from the 70s to the 80s. I think that was the most quintessential 80s Bond film because I mean you got
Yeah.
to think about it. 1985. Correct me if I'm wrong, either 85 or
Yeah, it's
80
85.
or for like when Top Gun came out
Oh,
and then like Back to the Future, like the first
mm,
one. Like if you think about that, those were also huge 80s movies. So going back and looking at A View to a Kill, like I mean, you get hit right off the bat with that epic Duran Duran song. Like that is one of, if not they're probably not the most popular, but one of their most well known. And I'm definitely a fan, and I definitely play that in the car, probably driving way too fast. But it's a great tune, and it's you have everything that you love about the 80s in that tune. It has that it gets you excited. The intro, if you look at the pre-title sequence, is super 80s as well. I mean, with the neon and everything. But yeah, I actually really like it. That's why I said it's my guilty pleasure Bond film
okay.
because it's one of those. There's certain Bond films that really highlight the era of which it's filmed in, and that's for the
Mm,
80s. Veto Kill is like that's it for me. Like you go to the Daltons and they're in that transition phase from the late 80s to the 90s, and that's cool, but like if you want like an 80s Bond film, I
yeah.
mean shoot, I think everybody was playing From View to a Kill on the radio, at least it was very popular, at least at least my parents when they were growing up and they saw the film being advertised and the song apparently was number one for so many weeks and very popular. So, you
Hmm.
know, I still relate to it because it brings me to that era, that 80s era.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I find it interesting. Lots of people will praise another American Bond film, Live and Let Die, and say they love it because it's so 70s, but on the other hand,
Mhm.
might not love A View to a Kill because it's too 80s. Some Bond
Mm,
films really dive into the era, whilst I
yeah.
think the previous film, Octopussy, is pretty classic. I mean, there's bits of Octopussy which could be set in almost any part of the
Yeah,
20th century.
very true. Yeah.
So it doesn't put you off the fact that it's
Oh no
very,
no
very
no
old-fashioned.
no! I mean, I relate it to I put it in the category. Believe this or not, it's like to like again like Top Gun or Back to the Future or Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You know, like super 80s films that I love going back and watching, and because it has that nostalgia, it has that music, it has that sound, it has that look on the screen. So no, it doesn't put me off at all. I really actually enjoy that bit of it.
Fair enough. And whilst we're on criticisms and talking about age of the film, we have to, I feel,
Mhm.
talk about the age of the star, Roger Moore.
Yeah.
Lots of people bash on this film for that. I'm just curious how it struck you.
Yeah, I see it's hard because it's like a double-edged sword. You really love the fact that he is so involved with Bond at this point. Like he loves Bond. I mean, you
Yeah.
could argue that Roger Moore was one of the actors that really encouraged meeting fans and really loved doing what he was passionate about. And Bond was such a huge part of his life that he just could, if he wanted to, would keep on doing it. But at the same time, Bond is this character that's suave and he has a certain look about him. And
Mm.
unfortunately, Roger was getting to the point where he's getting a bit older, and also it was kind of a little cringy to see his love interest be as young as she was. And then, of course, like the shower scene at the end was like, okay. But,
I think his
it's
last line is that that's not the soap.
right, yeah. Like it's a little that is a little much, but I mean, you have to realize it too. This is Roger Moore. I mean, Roger Moore is iconic. So if you look past, like, of course, any person that is brand new to Bond, I wouldn't show them A View to a Kill right off the bat because they'd be
Okay.
like, what? But for us Bond fans that have seen all the films numerous times, I think for me personally, it's just another one of his Roger Moore's films.
Okay. I
And
like
I
the
don't
idea. This isn't what you show at the beginning of a friendship, but you might show it at the end just to test the friendship.
definitely, yeah.
If
Oh
you
yeah,
love me,
there you
you'll
go.
watch this film.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Can confirm Stephanie and I watched this film and then we married. So, it's a
Okay,
good
there you go. Hey, it does work. It's okay.
I
Right.
have to admit, I really enjoy the fact that Roger Moore is older because at this point we've already had like Conan the Barbarian, we've had certainly we've had the Rocky film, the 70s, but we've also had some of the other big Stallone films. So those guys always just seem invincible. They can
Yeah.
smash through anything. Whereas Roger
Oh
Moore,
yeah.
when he's clinging to like a fire truck and it's speeding through a city, I'm worried for him. I'm invested.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh yeah.
the idea this dude in his 50s is clinging on for dear
Oh
life
yeah.
even if it's a stuntman, but I feel really invested in this, or if he's, in a burning
Definitely.
building, I'm nervous for him.
I actually was like a little nervous to believe it or not. Like I actually the first time watching it was nervous when he was on the Golden Gate Bridge, those scenes where he was hanging off by a thread, and then they did an amazing job with Max Zorin falling off. That looks super real.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have to go back and actually do some research. One of these days I'm gonna go through every single Bond film, and I'm not sure if you've done this, but go into the extras and like watch all the behind the scenes things because I feel like that would really not only enhance my Bond fan knowledge, but would be very interesting. So I'm kind of curious when I go back and watch this extra on this disc of For View to Kill, what little how they did certain scenes and whatnot because it's not every day that you can get a blimp and fly it super close to one of the world's most iconic bridges. So it'd be pretty interesting to see how it is. But hey, I have a question for you, Thomas, because this is 1985.
Hmm.
The style is rather interesting, but I know you're a stylish guy and you really love Roger Moore's
Thank you.
outfit. There's a lot of suits that you wear that and a lot of outfits you put together that are very Roger Moore. Are there any things from the film, this film in particular, that you either have in your collection or maybe one day want to replicate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now I'm wearing a velour filler tracksuit from the 1980s that Roger Moore wears
Right,
in
yeah.
an
Very
early
nice.
part of the film. Not the identical one because the costume department adapted the one he actually had.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Othello is an Italian brand, so Roger Moore, particularly introduced quite a few Italian brands. His wife was Italian, his children, of course, are
Mhm.
half Italian. So there's quite a few Italian brands he brings in. I love his brown suit in California, so I wore a similar brown suit when I visited the Sutton House, for
Mhm.
example. And yeah, I said there's a lot of good looks in this, as there are kind of Roger Moore in the 80s went towards very classic
Yeah.
tailoring, which I appreciate. Actually, getting some of the fabrics from here in Yorkshire. I think
Okay.
in the early 70s, I think he was on a board of directors of a fabric company here.
Okay.
And so he was known. In fact, one of them was based in a Yorkshire town very close to me called Idle. And
Oh,
there
okay.
is a working man's club in Idle, and there's a sign that says Idle Working Men's Club.
Nice.
Yeah, so yeah, there's quite a few looks. I think the velour tracksuit is definitely the one
Oh
I'm
yeah, it
a
looks
big
great. It
fan
looks great on you. I don't know if I could pull it off, but it looks great on you.
of. Thank you very much. I see you're wearing the Aston Martin
I am.
polo.
Yes. Yes, I am. I opted to go for a more relaxed as I don't know when this is going to be posted, but today is Saturday, so it's like one of my only days off. So I was like, I could come in full Roger Moore suited, but then again, I don't I it's Saturday. Let's
Yeah.
relax a little bit. We put the newsboy. This is actually a Lock and Co cap though.
Oh, is
So
it? Oh,
yeah,
really?
I'm keeping the British end up. This is a
Hmm.
Lock and Co newsboy cap I got the last time I was in London.
Oh,
So
wow.
from the shop,
Yeah.
hand picked it out and everything. So,
Oh,
I
wow.
think I don't correct me if I'm wrong. Speaking of Lock and Co,
Mhm.
did they supply the hats for the scene in when they went to what was that
At Ascot.
the
Yeah.
Ascot? They they
They're
they
all
did.
wearing yeah, it's Lock and
So
Co
hey, look,
hats. Yeah.
I'm technically on brand. We're both doing it. So
I like that we're both wearing kind of on-brand things, but things that
yeah,
I guess aren't the first thing you think of with James Bond necessarily.
right,
But I
exactly.
really like that. And I must admit, I've been to Lock and Co, but I've never been inside because I've always been on a
Oh, really?
Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
I've never actually.
I went because it was one of those stops that I had to go. Like if you there when you go to London, there's just some shops that are so iconic. Florist, Lock and Co, Turnbull and Astor, you have to go and see. And of course, for me, also has the Kingsman Tide with Tide,
Yes.
which is what we chatted about before in our previous podcast episodes, where they have the scene where Valentine goes and gets his hat for Royal Ascot, and they have like a little microchip that records him. But and everyone who wants to listen about my Kingsman obsession, you guys can go back to the previous episodes. I'm not going to go into that, but yeah, there's little, of course, connections there too.
It's good, it's good. And I feel the Kingsman rides that wave of the fun Bonds. Like I
Oh
think it
yeah,
came out when the Bonds were getting very, very dark and gritty, and they produced something
yeah,
that's just fun.
definitely.
But also still quite violent, and this film does have some of the more violent edges. I think this was Roger Moore's take on it that does have some pretty violent stuff in it.
Yeah, actually, there is. I mean, shoot, you have the scene where in the city hall, Sutton's boss actually gets shot, like point blank, and they light the whole building on fire. That was pretty that was pretty intense, especially considering it's the San Francisco City Hall. Funny enough, that scene, I did actually go back and I remember I looked back at outtakes, and there's a video on YouTube of one of the outtakes where this was right when Stacy got fired and she goes to the elevator with Roger Moore. And and they're doing that scene where she's all, disheveled and about to cry, saying, I got fired, he fired me. And then Roger Moore simply says, "Oh well, go. He can go f off or something." It was the first time ever I heard Roger like actually curse. Obviously, it was not put in a film, but I was like, "Whoa!" It was one of those funny things. I was like, That's hilarious." Because then obviously after he said that, they broke character and started laughing. So it was one of the. I'm sure you could find it anywhere on YouTube, but it's that one outtake that it's pretty iconic that it's tied to the film, which is it's always makes me laugh when I watch it.
Oh, good. Well, it's good to hear that they did have some light moments like that, because I know
Yeah.
that there are often stories that Stacey Sutton wasn't too happy with the role, and
Mhm.
it wasn't great on set with
Mm,
her. Hence the joke about pity they couldn't find a boiler suit that fit, and she comes in wearing this beautiful tailored.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah. I'm very curious because obviously San Francisco is seen in a lot of American films, and the Golden Gate Bridge has been smashed since Superman in almost every
Hmm.
American
Yeah.
disaster film.
Yeah.
It also doubles for other places, like the Capitol in Washington, D.C. is also in
Mhm.
films often it is actually just San Francisco City Hall because it's closer and cheaper
Mhm.
to film. But I'm curious, having a British film crew come in and film an American city, do you see a difference in the way that they approached it, or is it just Bond?
No, I think they did a great justice. Like I said, when I first saw the film, I was like, whoa, that's actually someplace I could actually recognize that scene. I could recognize
Ah,
that
okay.
location, recognize that street corner because I've been there before.
Mhm.
Sometimes when people come in and do this kind of thing, they try to cut corners and try to make it look like it's what it is, but it's not. You can tell, especially if you live there. But
Mm.
no, the Bond crew, as per usual, did an amazing job, and I think they did San Francisco justice for sure.
Okay. I must admit, I was very, very surprised because I've taken the drive from Stacey Sutton's house to City Hall, and geographically it works. I'm not used to films working geographically.
Yeah,
Um,
well, actually, they're in two different cities. I don't know if many people know this. The Sutton House, which the actual name of the house is it's not the Sutton House. It's left my brain for the
it's the
moment. But
Dunsmuir estate.
Dunsmuir Estate, that's right. Thank you. It's actually in Oakland, which is a
Hmm.
different city, obviously from San Francisco. Maybe about 15, 20 minutes away from each other. So, but it still works because it's in the general area.
Yeah, and there's that big bridge that kind of connects
Yeah.
them, right? So she drives
Right.
across that in the film, and again, I was quite surprised. I'm used to films where, like Skyfall, where James Bond
Yeah.
jumps on top of a train in Istanbul, and then a couple of seconds later, he's in southern Turkey, which is
Yeah.
quite some distance away. It looks
Right.
fantastic, but and in the
Right.
James Bond universe, that's how it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But Stacey Sutton's house really is just a nice
Yeah.
commute, and I think she's probably got the best commute of any James Bond character.
Oh yeah, definitely easy. I mean, easy enough to where she's like eating chips and peanuts while she's driving her Jeep. Very 80s scene, listening to the radio.
Absolutely, I feel films need more of that kind of thing, I think.
Oh yeah.
And it's a beautiful soundtrack as well. I feel I
Yeah.
couldn't look at the Golden Gate Bridge without thinking of the swell of music it has in the film.
That is true. I will agree. While For You to Kill main song, obviously that's the big thing, right? That's what we know
Hmm.
the film for, Duran Duran. I think we don't give enough credit for the actual soundtrack. I mean, I love listening to it. Wine with Stacy, that track is really nice. It's really beautiful, really elegant. Anything when they're at Max Zorn's the whole horse scene when they're all together at that party and Roger Moore's in that beautiful white tux. Like
Mm.
anything in that, like that sound is just so beautiful because one thing I love about films, in the Bond films in particular, they do a great job incorporating the main theme with an orchestral background, whether it's Bond
Yeah.
going and doing a mission or he's just enjoying some wine with a lady or whatever, they incorporate the theme using beautiful strings or horns, and it's just filtered throughout the score, which I think is so beautiful, and I love that. I mean, you hear that in Star Wars and other film franchises, but they did a really good job with Ryuko, I think. Then the music score for sure is fantastic. One of my favorites, which I'm still looking for that one on vinyl. So hopefully one day I can find it.
I have to say, I went to a concert recently where they played that track, Wine with Stacey,
Oh,
and
really?
I play the flute. So it's always one of my favorite pieces to hear.
Oh,
And the
nice.
guy playing the flute was fantastic. And I commented, and the family next to me just really wanted to drill down into what do you think of that flute player? And they
Mm.
really drilled down. And I suddenly realized uh, it was his family.
Oh,
His
no
family
kid.
had gone. I was so glad I said something positive about the flute
Oh,
player.
good. I was gonna say, uh-oh, if you would have drilled him otherwise, it might have
Ah,
not been
well,
a
that
happy
note could have
event for any
been
longer.
it's a bit
Yeah.
breathy in place.
Whoops.
No, it's a
No, but
fantastic
I
piece.
agree that the film score in this one's pretty good. I really like it.
Can I ask, what is your personal highlight of this film?
Man, I think personal highlight would definitely be the fact that a majority of the film is filmed in my backyard. To say
Hmm.
I can spend a day if I want to on a weekend and go and visit it and be in a Bond location. Again, I wish there was more smaller Bond moments like him going to restaurants or someplace where he got something to eat or drink where I could actually do that. But it's just walking around. It's being outside, which is awesome too. It's just that's probably the highlight. It's just seeing one of the most iconic places In My Own Backyard and a
Mm.
Bond film, well, iconic Bond film because it was Roger Moore's last.
Yeah.
So I would say that's going to be probably the highlights, just the location and all that for sure.
Oh yeah, I like that. It's very Roger Moore, especially he was a very accomplished horse riding. And
Yes.
Cubby Broccoli loved horses, the little Cubby Broccoli DNA in this. I love it as a transatlantic Bond because we do have some lovely bits in the UK, like
Yeah,
Ascot,
I'm sure.
and then it goes to the
Yes.
Golden Gate Bridge. I enjoy the fashionable contrast of if Roger Moore is old, then we have the younger Bond villain,
Right.
and you've got all these kind of contrasts of old and new going all throughout the film.
Definitely, yeah. They contrast, but they fit together very well, I
Yeah,
feel.
it's yin and yang.
Minus the age gap between Bond and Stacy. But that's a look past that. That's a Grandpa Bond getting it on is it's Bond.
I must admit, I do like the relationship is initially a bit fatherly, which kind of
Yes.
works, but it's
Well,
compulsory.
yeah.
How it ends
Right.
is compulsory. They have to tick that box.
Yeah, definitely.
Roger Moore actually said, it's like telling a child their favorite bedtime story. You have to tell it in the way the child knows it. You can't
Yeah.
skip bits or leave bits out, they'll complain. So I feel if you hadn't had that scene, I think the audience at the time would have complained.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It all worked out.
I have to ask you, as an expert on this, David Yip, who plays Chuck Lee, CIA,
Mhm.
how is his American accent to your ears?
It's funny. I didn't even notice that it was. I mean, for me, it sounded pretty good. I mean,
Okay, okay.
for you to ask me that, I'm like, wait, he had an American accent. I mean, it sounded pretty good. I know a lot of people have talked about probably criticizing it a bit, but to me, it sounded like it fitted just fine, considering the fact that, San Francisco historically is home to a huge Asian population.
Mm,
It kind of makes sense. You have somebody who is Asian that has a high ranking level with the CIA out of San Francisco. I mean, hey,
yeah.
that's pretty cool. And I think that's cool because Bond producers realized that and they did a great job kind of bringing in that history too. So again, hats off for them for doing the research and everything. But yeah, no, I thought he did a great job.
Oh, fantastic. The one place I couldn't see in San Francisco because of my schedule was actually Chinatown, just like Bond. But I know the Bond producers
Oh,
wanted to
yeah.
have a kind of a Chinese American
Yes.
as a nod to that because they
Yes.
also couldn't work the script around that way. I did
Right.
watch this many years ago with my parents. They loved kind of the era it was set in. They loved the whole feel of it. They weren't very familiar with the film, but they kept
Mhm.
looking at him and saying, he used to be in a TV show like in the UK. He used to be a TV show
Yeah.
about a detective who was Chinese, and they're trying to remember the name, so I had to look it up. It was called The Chinese Detective.
There you go.
So he was
Oh,
a
wow.
lead in a detective show here in the
No, no kidding. There you go. I didn't even know that. That's pretty cool.
UK. One day I'll see it. I'm not recommending it. I haven't seen it
Yeah,
myself,
I still have
but I know he's a
way
leading
too.
man.
Speaking of leading detective shows, I still have to get through Simon Templar and the Saint. So
Mm.
let me get through that, and then I can watch that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I started watching it from the beginning and then just randomly on the TV. I think I caught some towards the end. I was amazed at the jump in quality. Like, but in only 5, 6 years. And again, I talked to my mother actually about this, and she was saying, yeah, in the late 60s, the jump in TV production generally was phenomenal in just a few years. So I'd recommend a newbie coming in at like season 5 or 6 actually,
Okay, sweet,
rather than
cool.
one, because for me it was like bonus episode of The Man with the Golden Gun or something like
Yeah,
that. It was exactly the same Roger Moore
right.
character.
I mean, he was Bond. Even at that young age, you could see it, and you could see why the Cubby and Harry wanted him to be Bond.
Oh,
Definitely.
absolutely. And on the last episode, no, episode a while ago, I talked to John Glenn, and he said Ian Fleming wanted Roger Moore as James Bond.
hmm
I know the
Which is
producers
a
also pushed
fantastic
that.
episode, by the way. That was
Oh,
amazing.
thank you very much. He did also tell me that Maud Adams is in the film in the San Francisco
Oh,
scene, and
right.
I mean, I've checked through the scene many times. I've never spotted her. Have you spotted
Yeah.
her? Can anyone spot her?
I know. Yeah, if somebody can let us know exactly the timestamp, when to pause it, and what part of the screen to be looking at, because I could not see it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough there. The global search for Maud Adams in her third Bond film continues.
There you go.
Thank you very much for joining me. I hope that we can gradually shift this from being a guilty pleasure to just a pleasure.
Oh,
But I
well, because we did this episode together, I think now it even has a special meaning, even more so. So it'll definitely become a pleasure for me.
thank you very much. Thank you once again to Chris Morales. Do check him out on Instagram. Do check him out on YouTube. That One Bond Guy. Links in the show notes. And thank you for listening.